Hello and welcome to Coffee with Carey. I always cut away from this part so you don't have to see me slurping. Today, I'm glad you could stop by. I wanted to talk about the 7 things to not talk about on a first date. And I have assembled this list from experience, from date feedback. I don't know if you are new here, but if you are, I am a matchmaker and a dating coach here in the Chicago area. And part of my matching people with new men and women that they haven't met before is that after the date, I ask for a feedback form, and it asks them a bunch of questions about what they liked, what they didn't, and I'm always looking for something constructive that I can pass along to my clients. And these come up over and over again, and especially so if people are new to getting back out into the dating world, whether it's because they were married for a long time or they lost their partner, and for some reason they find themselves thrust back into the dating world that is 2019. And I think this is really helpful advice. I hope you will agree. If you do, let me know in the comment section down below. Let's just get this going here with number 1. Number 1 is that we do not like when men trash talk their ex or women in general. I get a lot of people tell me that she felt this gentleman, I use that word like that, was misogynistic or probably doesn't like women because at some point during the conversation he was mentioning an old girlfriend that was crazy, and I'll put those quotes up again because that word shows up over and over again when men refer to women that they didn't get along with or didn't end up with as crazy. And that is messed up because that is a huge generalization. It is misogynistic in that it is taking all women and placing them into that category over and over again, where it seems that that's what they truly think all women are, just crazy, needy, whatever way they like to describe a woman being undesirable and not having her wits about her and overly emotional. So with that in mind, I like to tell my female clients to not do the reverse. We need to make sure we don't make generalizations. No sweeping generalizations about men on dating apps, men in relationships, how men don't like to commit, anything that puts this person on the defensive and makes him feel the need to defend himself against something you think, a quality you think all men possess. So be aware, you don't want to be the flip side of guys trash talking their ex. That includes your ex as well. Number 2, and speaking about your ex, is that a lot of times when we tell stories after losing a partner, or whether we lost them and we are a widow, or we lost them and we are a divorced woman, is that a lot of our stories that took place during that time in a marriage or in a long-term relationship involve this other person. When we went on vacation, this person was with us. So a lot of our stories would sound a lot like, we loved to go there, we always did this. Or when we were here, we took the opportunity to go, and a lot of we's in these conversations, in these stories rather, that you tell to people when you're sharing bits about your past. And I think it's important, once we are back to being single again, that we learn how to rephrase these stories, how to reformat them. And it takes practice, so that instead of saying we went here, to learn how to say I, because now it's your experience. You have to reformat it as an experience you had. Yes, you were with somebody else, but it wasn't about the we, it's about the you. So take some time and think about some of those stories that you do tell over and over, your vacations, where you lived, places you went, thoughts on raising children, and make sure that they're coming from yourself and not from a couple point of view. And a lot of times it's interesting when you think about these things as they apply to you, you'll realize that you may have slightly different thoughts on these than you did as part of a couple, which is an interesting side effect to that experience or that exercise. Number 3 would be work challenges or a bad day at work. People want to know what you do for a living, but to bring that energy from a bad day or something challenging that happened in the workplace with you to a date is never really a great idea. People will tell me that we just really got hung up on something that happened at work. He couldn't let it go. There was a lot of just bad energy based on something that had happened previously. And I suppose it doesn't have to necessarily be work, but your job is kind of yours. The challenges your job are kind of yours until you have a partner, if they want to share in that part of your life with you and be your support system to hear those things. But a first date is not your support system to nurture you and make you feel better about a bad day at work. So maybe save those challenges to talk with your parent or your best friend, somebody who can support you in a way that somebody you just met won't be able to. And that way you're not sabotaging your first or second date with a conversation that tends to lean real heavy into your career, your job, and your bad day. Number 4 on my list of things to not talk about on a first date would be politics and religion. And it's funny because when I'm screening somebody new in order to see whether I want to introduce them to my client, I always phrase it this way exactly. And now I'd like to ask you about 2 things that I don't want you talking about on first dates, but I like to make sure they'll be running smoothly in the background. And that is politics and religion. And that's how I always say it. It's been said so many times, it's got its own little introduction. And politics and religion are 2 very important criteria that we match with. I don't want to, especially in this day and age, in this political climate, one way or the other, as far as being conservative or liberal, is a deal breaker for a lot of people. So I think it's important to know where somebody stands, or whether they're extremely religious, which doesn't work for a lot of people who consider themselves more spiritual than religious, or they don't associate with organized religion anymore, but feel that they have a more personal relationship with, a spirituality. I think what I'm saying here is that I don't want anybody talking about that on first dates if you want it to be a successful first date. But I think that before you end up on a first date with somebody, there should be a phone conversation. It also saves you time, as opposed to running out to meet every single person you connect with through a friend or through a dating app, or that you've met briefly somewhere and set up a date. To have a phone conversation ahead of time to get to know some of these more nuanced topics or their feelings on certain things that are important to you can go a long way in saving you time from having to get dressed and drive across town and sit down and order something to drink and hang out, know you're going to be here with this person for an hour, where you could have just asked a couple questions in a phone conversation, found out that their political or religious leanings probably weren't going to work for you, and not had a full-on date. You could have just accomplished that with a phone call. So politics and religion on a first date, not a great idea. And with number 4 in mind, number 5 would be any subject that gets you riled up. If you are passionate about something to the point where you are not any longer open-minded or willing to hear other people's points of view, that should probably be saved for subsequent dates when this person knows you better and sees you as more of a reasonable person. It could be the environment. I mean, that's something that people are really passionate about. But also it takes you out of the moment. If you were to delve into that, it's going to take you down a road where your passion is going to kick in and it's going to start to monopolize the conversation. So if it's something you're truly passionate about and you know this about yourself, that it's going to get you riled up, it's going to get you going, and you're going to get tunnel vision if you bring up this topic, I'd probably steer away from that also until this person knows you on maybe date 2 or 3. I think it's good advice. What do you think? And number 6 is going to kind of take us back to number 1, which is making generalizations and trash talking members of the opposite sex with sweeping generalities. Now, this one, number 6, is talking about your ex, but not in a bad way. There are a lot of people who are here and dating and moving on in the very best way they can, but they still have not made peace with letting go of who was in their life previously. Whether it was a divorce and they were not the one who initiated the divorce and they harness feelings of hoping that it might work out or that they could renegotiate or work their way back. There's a chance that Maybe he would do counseling. If you are a person who still has strong feelings about your ex, and I know I certainly care about both people that I had long-term adult relationships with. And if I were talking to a friend, I would certainly talk about both of those people in glowing terms. And if you ask me about my ex-husband, I will only say that he is a wonderful person. Nobody doesn't like him. He was a great dad. He still is. And I wish all great things for him and the relationship he's in. And I see him for the holidays. I talk to him every once in a while to catch up. But he's not going to come up on any of my date conversations, that's for sure. And I think people are happy to hear that you have a good relationship with your ex, especially if there are children that you are raising together. But I think more detail than that, and making this person sound fabulous so that your date has to wonder if you're still harboring hopes or wishes or feelings of more than just fondness, is probably not ideal. It's great that you're not trash talking this person, but going in the opposite direction and showing that you hold them maybe on a pedestal. This person may start to wonder if they can ever live up to the feelings you have for somebody that you spent a lot of time with. So I think to have your elevator pitch on the state of your relationship with your ex, if you are raising children together, would probably be useful. And finally, in this list of 7 things to not talk about on a first date would be yourself exclusively. So many of us will take every opportunity to share all the wonderful things about us in excess. I say it all the time that nobody ever walked away from a date where they spoke about themselves most of the date and said, wow, that was a crappy date. People love to talk about themselves. I love to talk about myself. It's human nature. We all want to share our stories. We want this person to know us. We want them to like us. If we do like them, we want to share so much of ourselves on a first date that without thinking about it, we can easily slip into a habit of talking about ourselves and not doing our due diligence to truly find out about the other person. So for sure, if you know you have this tendency to monopolize a conversation and talk quite a bit about yourself, make yourself some sort of a check-in that you can think about periodically to question whether you're monopolizing this conversation. You can always sit back and say, wow, enough about me. I'm so sorry I do that. I just get excited when I make a connection with someone, but I really would love to hear more about you. This last thing I was talking about, have you ever or would you ever? All 7 points here. If you stay away from those and try to find out more about this person and more, not just about where they like to travel, if they've seen any good movies, but also if you can get past some of those typical first date sharing of information parts and get on to figuring out how this person thinks, what their opinions are and their ideas on things, you'll be in really great shape to lead you into date number 2. Well, I appreciate you stopping by today to see what I wanted to talk about. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And while you're there, if you could subscribe to my channel and hit that ring bell so you're notified every time I upload a new episode, I think that would be great, because I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, have a good one.